It's been a few months since we last looked at Sins of a Solar Empire 2, and there's been some big updates. I was excited enough when I saw the update from April included gameplay, but the May update included a nice new opening cinematic and the long-awaited addition of Titans to the early access game. We seem to be at or near the end of the actual TEC content now. We've got their ships, the Argonev starbase, and now the Ankalon and Ragnarov Titans, along with the Novolith cannon superweapon. All or most of the TEC units and structures seem to have their new Sins 2 models as well, so we must be getting close to the Visari as the second faction to be added. Right now the Visari and Advent do exist in minor faction form, but they're still using Sins 1 assets. There's been some updates to the UI and research as well, with military and civilian research taking up two parallel trees like they did in Sins 1, and giving a makeover to some of the main HUD, but I honestly think this is still an area where the game will need some work. The overall theme is good, but I had a hard time getting much information out of the icons themselves in the build bar especially. I don't know if it's the size or the contrast or what, but I ended up figuring out which button was which based on remembering build bar positions rather than actually recognizing the icons visually, which feels like it may not be ideal, especially with them still moving some of the UI elements around every release. It generally just seems like it's being very precious with screen real estate on menus that either slide out of the way or are pretty spaced out to begin with. I almost kind of zoned out or panicked when looking at the buttons because I couldn't recognize them, and I've never really had that response to a game before. On the much more positive side, there's a fleet organization system which allows you to assign ships to different battle groups or build them directly on that battle group's menu, which is incredibly helpful for organization, and I really like this. The visuals for it on the left side of the screen could use some work, but with this being its first introduction, I assume that's coming. As it is, I think it's a really neat feature that a lot of players will probably just never interact with because they might not find it. The big draw in this latest update though are the Titans and the Novolith cannon. In Sins 1, I was always a Visari player until the Titans were added, and then I started playing the TEC Rebels almost exclusively because I loved the giant railgun Titan, even if it's funny watching it shoot a tiny little missile at the planets while bombing. Luckily, the Ragnarov doesn't disappoint, which is great news for me right now since I can't play the Visari yet anyways. It's still large and shoots a large projectile, which seems in line with what I expected from before, so all of that checks out. But it does have an ability I didn't get the chance to use in my test game here, a built-in Novolith cannon. It's the same as the standalone superweapon in theory, as far as I can tell, but honestly way better in practice if you can get your Titan there. My assumption, based on not actually going and checking this at all, is that it's a pretty high level ability. Novolith cannons themselves have been changed to only be able to shoot one phase lane away or two with an upgrade, and the Titan seems to match this, which I think is a change I agree with the premise of, considering how Sins 1 games could turn into superweapon spam across the galaxy, especially since the movement of planets may open up new opportunities to use it throughout the game. But in practice, it seems really limiting right now, especially when so many gravity wells like the asteroids can't actually fit it, and those tend to be the things that are neighboring the planets that you would want to shoot. I struggled to really find a planet I could put one at where I'd be able to really use it, so I had to settle for obliterating a minor faction, because what was I gonna do? Pay all this money for a giant space cannon and then not shoot it? I feel like this is probably going to need some iteration on in the next updates, but again, I do agree with the premise. I think there's just some execution tweaks that it needs there. On the Ragnarov though, none of those limitations will really matter. It's a lot more powerful than the Novolith cannon, because you can just keep moving it along. I might even say that as the TEC Rebels, you probably don't need a regular Novolith cannon anywhere. If you're building them, it's generally going to be to attack a specific planet because of the limitations on how far they can shoot, but the Rebel Titan can just fly around wherever you need it to shoot. There's a bunch of other smaller changes in these updates as well, but that's the major stuff that I found while playing. We'll be continuing to keep an eye on the games that goes through early access, and I'm hoping to get some people together for a streamed multiplayer game before the next major update, and then again after that one. So if there's any other creators out there I should be harassing for that, let me know.